The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And a good afternoon, evening to everyone listening in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 6th of a series of 11 webinars designed to give you practical information to help you accelerate the growth of your business. My name's Peter Jeffrey and I'm the Business Development Manager for the City of Greater Bendigo. On behalf of the City, we're proud to partner with the team at the Business Re-Education Centre here in Bendigo to bring you high quality, practical information about how to grow your business through simple and effective actions and measures. So please do grab a pen and be ready to take notes so that you can be sure to implement actions that you identify as appropriate for your business. I strongly encourage you to act on this advice, even if it's the smallest or most simple thing. Often they're the best. At the end of this webinar, there'll be mention to future events that I also encourage you to consider for further business support. At the City, I work within the Economic Development Unit and we're focused on bringing high calibre events and initiatives to enhance the success of the local business community and businesses just like yours. If you'd like to know more about how we can support, please contact the team at the City of Greater Bendigo to discuss all available options for local small businesses on 5434 6000. That's 6000. Now, I'd like to introduce your presenter, Paul Henschel, who's the Managing Director of the Business Re-Education Centre here in Bendigo. Paul's business is one of the top 100 performing Action Coach business franchises. That's globally quite impressive considering there are over 4,000 franchises. He's also successfully coached small business for over 20 years, so he has some great experience to share, and if you do like what you hear, please do feel free to tell a friend about our future events. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that introduction and welcome aboard everybody for tonight's, this afternoon's webinar, which is called Getting Them Coming Back Again and Again. And so we're going to look at, return, what drives repeat visitation to your business, and also, what deters repeat visitation from your business. So, but before we get into all of that, I just like to always sort of make sure that everybody out there is that we're transmitting okay, because sometimes we can be sitting in here and thinking all things are going beautifully, and perhaps it's not. We did have a bit of a technical hitch last time, so I'm conscious now to make sure that we've got some that we're transmitting okay. So on your right hand side of your screen, you should see a panel, an input panel. If you can't, there'll be a little orange arrow up in the top right hand corner, and you click that and it'll expand. And I wonder if you could just simply indicate just that your hearing is okay, and that your screens are coming up okay. Right at the moment, you should have a slide up that says why customers leave, and a picture of clearly a shopper that we'd all like to have in the shops, given the number of bags she's carrying. So if you could just give me some feedback, just type something in saying all okay, or can't hear you very well, or anything like that. If you wouldn't mind, I'll just be able to see anything that comes up. And just checking. If you could, let me see. We've got anybody speaking, inputting. I'm seeing what's coming up. Okay, all good. Yes, anybody else want to, I'll see a few. I'm seeing, okay. All right, onward and upward. Onward we go. Let me just, okay, thanks for that. Just wanted to check. Okay, so we're all on board. And we're going to look at the first thing, when we talk about bringing people back to your business. So I guess one of the things that you need to understand is potentially why people don't come back to your business. And let's have a look at that. Okay, so in terms of surveys, this survey isn't done last week. This is a pretty common outcomes that we've found nationally as to why people don't come up. And you might be not surprised by, how come those customers didn't come back? Well, 1% of every person's customer base has to die at some time, and that'll give a reason for your first 1%. The second group, which is at 3%, they actually move. They move location basically, and if you're a location-based business, and if you're not an online-based business, then most of them actually are, whether you're retail or a service provider, and that service is a real-world service, an offline one. Then clearly location, geographics makes a difference, so people move. That's another one. 5% of people don't come back to you because they've actually a friend or relative has come into your industry, and so they sort of some feel obliged in some cases to sort of say, well, my brother-in-law's just become a real estate agent, and therefore I feel as though I should use him, or whatever your business does. 5% of those people, they're actually found that they've got a friend or relative that actually does this. So 9% sold by a competitor. You fundamentally got outmarketed and outsold, basically. There was a good offer out there. The competitor contacted the client, might have been through advertising or through direct mail or through some form of direct contact, but fundamentally you got outsold basically. So that's 9%. So starting to add these things up, what are we up to? About 18% so far. 14% on product or price, meaning that the product that they were after you didn't have, or they didn't think you had it anyway, and so they've gone somewhere else because of it. They were looking for something that they didn't know, they didn't think you had, or in fact you don't have. And also pricing sits in this area as well. I suppose you can look at that as the 9% in front as well, but fundamentally, it's really all about that sort of product and price point. Okay, so I guess the perhaps the surprise in that is, in a way, how little price actually does make, when we're always a little bit nervous around this whole pricing points and always trying to look for the lowest price and whatnot, and we realise that it's only price affects about 14% of your client base. So what's the 68%? So now, remembering this is not 68% of your client base. This is not 1% of your client base, 3% of your client base. This is of the 100% of those people who don't return. This is why they don't return. The percentages of those that don't return, not the percentages of your client base, clearly. So of those that don't return. So 68% of people who leave your business leave because of this next one. And it's called, wait for it to drop in, it's called perceived indifference, which means they think you just don't care about them. Now, I make the point here, it's perceived indifference. It doesn't mean that you don't care about them. What it means is they don't think you care enough about them. And that's why it says perceived indifference. You can be sitting in your business right now saying, I do everything I can for the business, for my clients, and sure you do. But somehow it's not connecting with necessarily with them. And some of the stuff that you're not even aware of. And the challenge is, for those customers who simply don't come back, you never will know, because they've now gone, and it's difficult to survey X clients and get a high rate of participation. So these are the statistics, and this 68% of people leave because of perceived indifference. They think you just don't care. Okay, so what that means is we've got to make sure that we're showing people that you do care. Now, of course, the opposite to perceived indifference, where you can say, I do care, but their perception is that you don't. It can also be the fact that you don't care at all, but their perception is that you do. So I suppose it works two ways. I'm hoping that everybody out there does care about their clients and not, I was being a bit facetious there. So let's have a look at what it is that we're setting out to achieve here. We're setting out to achieve a group of what we call raving fans. They are those people who clearly are never going to leave and who are going to be out there selling on your behalf. How good would that be to have a team of people out there who are your sales team? Unpaid, I might add. In fact, they're actually paying to be a part of your sales team because they're continuing to use your services at the same time. That's a terrific environment to exist for any business. I'm sure you'd agree. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we've got to do is let's have a look and see, and I don't want to bog this webinar down with the details of each of these steps, but I do want to make everybody out there aware of what these steps actually are. So let's have a look and see where we start with this ladder of loyalty. Okay. The first step is a suspect. Okay, so we need to then simply define what a suspect is. A suspect is somebody who fits your business's demographics, geographics, demographics, psychographics, whichever graphics you want to use, probably all of them. But a suspect is simply somebody who fits the profile of being likely to be a client or a customer of yours. Now, nothing has happened. You've done no marketing. You've just literally, you might say they're your target group. So what falls into your target group are your suspects. And it's important because that's where your marketing actually starts. We're not spending our time today necessarily talking about the ins and outs of marketing, but your marketing will always start by identifying your target group, and they are in fact your suspects. So if your suspects are people who are selling their houses in the next 12 months in the areas of the city of Greater Bendigo, then that would be your target group. If your target group are people who own a domestic pet in a certain geographic area, then they would be your suspects. Now, your objective, of course, is to connect with those people, and that would lead to our second step. Now, our second step is a person goes from suspect to a prospect when they've responded to your marketing. So what you will have done is you will have identified who your suspects are, who your target is, and you'll have done something to put a message out to them. It's advertising, it's a billboard, it's a direct marketing piece, it's a referral, asking a friend, who do you know, whatever it might be. Anybody that responds to your marketing effort, as passive or as aggressive as that might be, becomes a prospect. Okay, so they haven't bought yet, but they're interested in. If you like, they've raised their hand and said, hey, I'm sort of interested in what you do. Okay, so what happens next is they buy something. Otherwise, they would stay a prospect. So they don't, in my world, they don't become a customer or a client just yet. The first time they buy something, we need to think of them as a shopper, which means that they're shopping around. They could have been using somebody else's services in what you do for the last 5 years, and they've experienced some perceived indifference. So they've come across to your business in the hope that yours might provide better service or better value for them than the last one. And they've bought once, and therefore they're a shopper. It means that they're not really connected to you at this stage because they've bought once. And you don't want to fall into that trap of saying, oh, well, they've purchased once, therefore they're a great customer. Well, not yet. So the shopper is, I think we can all appreciate what that means. Now, at this point in time, you should know who they are. Fair to say, any business at this point in time, I would have expected that you know something about them. You certainly know how to connect with them again at the prospect level. You certainly should know how to connect with them again at the shopper level. So, you know, they've bought something from you. Your marketing effort should now be, going forward, should now be a lot easier because you actually already know who they are. And they've bought from you once, so they've had an experience with you. Now, our job now is to get them to come back again to become a customer, which means that they've come back for a second time, at least. Now, there's a lot of, I guess, marketing effort that goes along with each of these steps. Fair to say, right from the bottom, where you've identified who they are, you've done some sort of marketing to get them to stick their hand up and say, hey, I'm a likely customer of yours. I've then done something next, which is a sales process to get them to buy the first time. I've now got to consider, what do I do next to get them to come back again the second time. This is what we'll be talking about going forward, but just so as you know, your effort there is to get them to come back again, because we know that the cost of the first acquisition is about 8 times more than the subsequent acquisitions or repeat marketing. So it's worthwhile. You have to get people to come back again. Otherwise, you know, your cost of acquisition is very high against one purchase, and I think we'd all appreciate that for simply for its worth. So what happens after that? Well, that's great. Well, I've got a customer, and that's it. You know, I've got a customer, but hang on a second. There's 3 more levels that a customer can go to, and let's look at the next level. Moving people to become a member. Now, this is if you think about this from a sports facility type point of view, a golf club is a good example. I don't know how many people out there might be members of golf clubs, but golfing is an interesting model or context to put this in, because I can become a shopper where I just come and I've played 1 round of golf at that course. I may never come back again. If I come back again, I've become now a customer of it. But to become a member, I really want to be connected with that. I'm really sort of convinced this is where I want to play most of my golf. Does that make sense? And there's a process. There's a formal process of going from sort of well, in golfing it's green fees player to deciding to be a member and saying, yeah, look, you know, I've looked around at other golf courses and I've played around with different courses, and this is where I want to sort of call my home. And what happens there is, you know, I'm going to actually be qualified, and I'm going to be made an offer. And when I become a member, I'm going to expect some member privileges. So, you know, unless there are member privileges, why would I become a member? I mean, it seems like unless there's value in me becoming a member by me committing to you, then I don't see, there's no real reason for me to commit beyond the sort of the customer experience. So I'm looking here for, what am I getting in recompense of me committing my business to you on a pretty regular and permanent sort of basis, and what are the recognitions that I get as for being a member? You know, what's my, if you like, my membership pack? So these are things that I think we can see exist in clubs, but we're not necessarily always going to that level ourselves in terms of our business and connecting with our customers to get them to the new level of saying, okay, what am I doing to encourage you to fit into a club? So the sorts of things like VIP clubs, whereby I get access to potentially special events. I get first notice of new stock items. I get member benefits. I get this and that. You know, you might immediately think of, well, does that mean they get a 10% discount on all the purchases? Well, only if you're not thinking very hard. about what else that you can do to provide value against their membership. But I encourage everybody who's listening here to consider what is the step that you're making, number one, to get a shopper to come back, and what are you paying to get a customer to come back, and then what are you doing to recognise, how are you identifying those customers who really need to be offered the next level, and do I have an offering at the next level? Or am I simply happy to keep people as sort of customers, and then, to be honest, their shopper preferences are out of your control at that point in time. Once you make them a member, then they're sort of locked in. Once I become a member of a golf club, I'm mad not to keep playing a certain number of games at that golf club, or I won't get my money's worth. And if I don't get my money's worth, I probably won't stay a member. So it's important to consider that. The next level is, what do I do once I become a member? Well, members become advocates. Advocates is a state of mind, not necessarily a state of business. So what that means is they consider themselves advocates for your business. When people ask them, where should I go to get this, or where should I go to get that, their immediate response has got to be your business. You should talk to Bob at this business, because they do a great job. Their service is terrific. Their products are terrific. Their value is great. By the way, here's a card that I happen to have of Bob's, and mention my name, type of thing. So they're advocates. The difference between that and the next level, which I've already mentioned, is raving fan. Is raving fans sort of advocate without being asked. Raving fans talk about you in conversation. I've got to tell you the experience that I had the other day with business X, Y, or Z. As a part of conversation, advocates will refer to you when asked. Raving fans refer to you even when they're not asked. Raving fans are the sort of people that turn up and want to tell you about the experience or the product offering, or whatever it might be, as a part of a conversation, not necessarily as a request for information. And I hope that defines the difference between an advocate and a raving fan. Not a lot, but there is just a little bit. And it's the raving fan that's fundamentally the active salesperson for your business. And again, I pose the question, wouldn't it be great to have a league of raving fans out there? Now, I have to say, this is, I guess you'd have to look at this ladder as not necessarily having straight sides. It's nearly always sort of pyramid shaped, I guess. There are far more at the bottom, and they lessen as they go to the top. But the more that you can actually, if you like, get to rise to the top, the better your business will be. And of course, the more members, advocates, and raving fans that you have, the less marketing for new business that you have to do and you have to pay for. So it's a really cost effective. I guess I'm advocating here for the importance of lifting your clients up this ladder, because at the end of the day, you'll find that your marketing is being done for you. And again, wouldn't that be a fantastic outcome if you could reduce your marketing to word of mouth, if you like, or referral. And any business that's out there and has been out there for a certain amount of time should be using more and more referral and recommendation-based marketing than paid. But you have to get there in the first place. So hence the reason why we need those bottom levels. And of course, anybody that is referred to you still comes in as a prospect, shopper, customer, member, advocate, and raving fan. That goes through their own system of climbing the ladder. But it's up to you as a business owner to provide that ladder and encourage people up the ladder. It's not just a case of, well, I'll take a passive response to this and just hope they climb the ladder themselves. So here's the sort of stuff that I believe, leads to a good number of raving fans within your business. So you can create these raving fans, not just hope that they happen. Okay, that's what we'll be talking about from here on. As I alluded to, I guess, customers expect satisfaction, but they only talk about being disappointed or delighted. Consider that from your own point of view. As much as you're a business owner, you're also a business user. You're also a customer of other businesses. And I wonder how many of those businesses that you proactively talk about. Wouldn't it be true that you talk about when you've been disappointed, and usually fairly in a fairly major way, or delighted by that? Satisfied, satisfied means I got what I paid for, or I got what I expected. That's great, but it doesn't necessarily create advocates or raving fans. In a survey that says, and I think I've mentioned it before, I think in our marketing webinar, that the number one question that you can ask your client base is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all and 10 being absolutely, how likely are you to refer our business to friends and family? You might want to write that down, because if you're ever going to survey your client base, it's the one question that you always should ask. And in fact, it's become a global KPI, the response to that question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer our business to your friends and family? Ask that question. Now, what's the answer need to be for them to actually proactively make that recommendation? You have to score a 9 or a 10 for that to actually happen. 7s and 8s will certainly see them continuing to use you, but not necessarily proactively recommend. And below that, and you're in trouble from them even returning themselves. So it's a great question to ask, and lots of people have often asked me, should I survey my clients? Well, yeah, absolutely. And if I do, what would I ask them? Well, if you only got the chance to ask them one question, ask them that one, and use that as your benchmark for your customer service, which is what we'll talk about for your level of customer service. How do you measure customer service? That would be one way to measure it. And you can use that as your benchmark. For instance, if you currently did that and you were rating a 7, and you implement some of the things that we'll be talking about in the next 30 minutes or so, then 3 months down the track, 6 months down the track, you survey them again, you'd want to look for an increase in that overall score. And that's an indicator of how well you're doing in your customer service, because it's otherwise sometimes can be pretty hard to quantify. So the question is, do your customers leave you feeling satisfied or delighted? I'd like to think that they don't leave you feeling unsatisfied. If they do, you've got to get to satisfied. If they're currently at satisfied, get them to delighted. And let's have a look at the ways to do that. So we want to lift our levels of customer service. But guys on the call here, the reality is that if I said to you today, go away tomorrow and improve your customer service, it's a motherhood statement, isn't it? What do you do? It's not detailed enough. It's as I say, it's, to me, customer service is a motherhood statement. When someone says, when I ask people, why do people come back to your business? And they say, oh, well, it's our level of customer service. What does that mean? You have to actually define what that means for your business. What does good customer service look like in your business? And now I want to show you what the outline is, because you can create great customer service and you can actually go away and do something based on the next three key factors. I put these three things. You'll remember it by the Three Musketeers. I'm sure that's your trigger to remember these things by. And the first one is consistency. Now, we know consistency is a service level factor, because one of the largest businesses in the world, one of the highest growth businesses in the world over the last 30 years has been built on nothing but consistency. Their name's McDonald's, and whether you like the product or not, you have to like their business model. And it's completely based on consistency. That's all it is. It doesn't matter where I go, when I go, I know predominantly what I will get, and it doesn't change. And that's what they've built their business on. So we'll talk a bit about that, how to achieve that consistency. The second thing is your products and services, they must be easy to buy. And you've got to really think deeply about that one. You might think that you're easy to buy, but you may in fact have constraints or barriers in the sales process that actually makes your product not easy to buy, and we'll talk about that later. And thirdly, the third factor is wow factor. So, well, that's what I'm calling it, wow factor. Something that actually takes people back, if you like. So, they literally have to either think, or even better say, wow. Is there anything about what you're doing that makes them go, wow? And we'll look at that, and we'll look at seeing, well, where do I put this wow factor to get the most effect? So hopefully that's our agenda now going forward, to look at these three things. And honestly, business isn't, as they say, rocket science. These are three areas that you might go, oh, that makes sense. Well, let's look into each of these three things. But collectively, in my opinion, customer service breaks down to these three things. So this now gives us something to be able to go out and actually do, which will improve customer service, as opposed to go out and improve your customer service. Okay? So let's look at this thing around this issue around consistency and customer expectation. All right, how do we create consistency how do you create consistency in your business? Now you might look at some of these things that I'm going to put up here and say, oh, that's corporate. No, it's not. You're a one-person business. Well, one-person business will generally be more consistent than anything plus one, because the inconsistency can often come from inconsistencies between people. Well, I'm talking here about consistency independently of who provides that service, of when that service is provided. So we usually start. These are not in a particular order, but things like policy. What is my policy on things? Do I have a way, or do I have a policy on one thing and another? Do I have a returns policy? Do I have a policy around the expectations of my team, around who will be there and when, and all of those sorts of things. So the first driver of consistency is usually company policy. The second driver of consistency is procedures, how we go about things. When this happens, what follows? I think this one is probably where I would see a large percentage of small businesses fall down, is that they don't have procedures to follow. What happens when somebody complains? What happens when somebody comes in at this time? What happens at this, and what happens with that? It's a little bit sort of laissez-faire, fly by seat of your pants type thing. But that might be not okay, but it might be the facts in early days. But the sooner you can actually create procedures, the better. So often referred to, I guess, as systemization and systems in your business, the way that we do things. Work instructions is the next level down. So being as specific as you can. And we talked about the consistency of McDonald's. And for those people who have just not simply been users of McDonald's, but perhaps seen a little bit under the surface there, maybe worked for them as a student, part-time job or whatever, you'll appreciate that how detailed and documented the how-tos actually are, and that's a big factor in the reason why things are delivered the way they are, and so consistently. Accountability is another factor in consistency. Who's watching out? Which also leads to this one, quality control. Who's watching out? Who's making sure that things are actually delivered in the way that our work instructions outline, that they and our procedures outline that they need to be. And is that at what level? All of these things are appropriate to the level of your business, if you like. They shouldn't be existent or non-existent based on the level of the business. They may actually just, in fact, be more highly refined and perhaps a little less highly refined, but they still should be present in some way, shape or form. So training, of course, is the big deal, is the big one. Too often people are, stood behind a counter and said, would you, mind the shop, or, when the phone rings, just answer it. These sorts of things. I mean, how do you want me to answer it? What do you want me to say? How do I take a message? How do I even work the phone? Which is interesting. These are the sorts of things that require procedures, but they also require training. It's not appropriate to just hand somebody a bit of paper and, all the best with that. We need to actually appreciate that training is a big part of every business. And if you're a one-person show, these sorts of things will be inherent in you. As soon as you go to outside of yourself, these things need to be applied. And of course, this is where the businesses struggle, and they struggle to grow because they don't understand how to create, or they're frightened of not being consistent when it goes beyond themselves. So you have to actually start to look at these things. Otherwise, you'll limit your business's growth to a one-person show because you don't have these things in place. And of course, this constant training, retraining. Training is not a one-off thing. Systems aren't one-off. Systems are not set and forget. They need to be reviewed. They need to be changed. What works for a business of 2 and 3 people may not work for businesses of 8 or 9 persons. So systems need to be reviewed. They need to be changed. And we need to find new ways and better ways to continually do things, which requires training and retraining. So, never give up on this aspect. This is one aspect to me, that has to be there for a client to be able to grow through those steps. You won't get referrals on an ongoing basis if the level of service is inconsistent for the person that you've just referred to. If you go into, think about it from your own point of view, if you go into another person's business and you do receive great service, and as a consequence of that you say, hey, you recommend it to a friend, and the friend goes in and receives a different level, there's unlikely to be any more referrals, and in fact you may even lose the referee purely because they're now somewhat embarrassed by the referral that they gave in the first place. So this is why it's important to be consistent over time frames and different people who may service that referral. Okay, I think we've talked enough about consistency, putting these things in place. The second thing, easy to buy. So what makes your product, what could make it difficult to buy versus easy to buy? Here's a list of a few things. Payment systems. I wonder whether we've all been into cash only, or our systems down. The cash only one is a concern for me, and you might think, oh well, it's expensive to have other systems of payment. I believe it's expensive not to have those other systems of payment. Nowadays, fewer and fewer people walk around with wads of cash in their pocket, to be quite honest. And this is all about convenience, isn't it? We're a convenience society now. If I've got to cross the road to get money out, I might as well cross the road to go to the competitor who takes credit card that gives me, if I buy it at the right time, 55 days interest free. For you, you get your money. Might it cost you 1.2%? Well, I believe that's a pretty low price to pay for payment today, and the fact that it's accessible and you can make it. Right. So there's the one. Things like terms. Do you offer? Can you spread payments? Some people. I think a classic case of in point of this one, and I'm using sort of familiar names because of, I guess, because of that familiarity. But the thing that the person that comes to mind, the business that comes to mind when I think of terms is Harvey Norman. They make it easier and easier to buy. Some would sort of may suggest that they make it so easy to buy that people are buying things that they perhaps can't afford. You can make your own judgments against that. But what we do know is that making things at terms will open access to that might otherwise be inaccessible in terms of ability to purchase. Things like hours, how available is your business? How accessible is your business? This is why even the things like how easy are you to find, both in a directory or online. Remembering all of these things apply just as much to online, of course, as offline. Accessibility, websites that don't work, websites that don't give me your hours, that don't give me your phone number, that phones that ring out. These are all things that are around access and accessibility. Again, availability. How difficult is it for me to actually access you and your knowledge so that I can make a decision to buy? You've probably all had experiences where you maybe wanted to buy, and I'll use trade, a particular trade might be as an example, and it's been difficult for me to even get the person to call me back. I've left messages, and now I'm desperately wanting to spend my money, but I've got a business that seems to be working just as hard not to actually allow me to buy. This is the sort of stuff, and you have to really look at your own business critically and say, how am I making it difficult for customers to contact me, access my accessibility, and then how easy or difficult am I making it for them to pay, etc. So how difficult is my sales system? Have I got a sales system that steps me through? If that doesn't make sense to you about the sales system, go back to our webinar that we did. And my memory is not fantastic. I'll reference my own documentation here. Go back to our second webinar if you're wanting to know more about sales systems. Then go back to our second webinar of the series and check that out, because that's another method, another way that you may be making it difficult to buy, in that your sales system doesn't flow and sticks. So all of these sorts of things are easy to buy. Hope that makes sense. I hope that's sort of getting you thinking about, well, where might my business be able to improve in these areas? And that's the purpose of these webinars, is not just to sit and listen, but to in fact think about your own business and say, where can I improve it? How can I improve it in these particular areas? Okay, so what can you change to make you easier to buy? That's the question. I'm purposely going to be silent for a second so that you can maybe write something down. Okay. Hopefully you've scribbled a few things down that you can complete when we've finished after this. Now, so our third factor we've talked about, being consistent, will get people, will create this sort of continuous buying. Making it easy to buy, clearly, is a part of customer service. And this third area, which I'm just terming wow factor. I think it's a term that most people are probably familiar with. But I have to say, what you really need to do here is not just sort of consider wow factor, but what is wow factor? Wow factor is when somebody actually is surprised by the delivery of your product, by the product itself, or the delivery of that product or service, where they really do actually say wow, because they've gotten something that's beyond their expectation. So let's look at what they are. Let's look at where they are and how to define a wow factor and how to place a wow factor, at least in your process of sales and or delivery of your product or service. What I recommend here is that you identify what we'll call the moments of truth. Moments of truth, look it up after this, tomorrow or after the webinar. Google moments of truth and you'll get a better appreciation of what I mean here. But these are the points in time in your process of either selling or delivering or even after sales where people make decisions, critical decisions about going forward or stopping. There are critical moments that are more important than others, and there are always these sort of interactive points, the points where you have the most interaction with the prospect or client. I'll give you an example. If you are a retailer, a moment of truth would be the approach to the shop. How does it look from the street? Is it appealing? Does it draw me in? Does it make me want to go through the door? Usually my second moment of truth is when I've just entered the doorway, or when I first walked in and I've been able to sort of, the shop opens up to me to a certain extent and I'm having that initial look around. Is it cluttered? Does it look like is the product range what I'm actually looking for? And then you've got your next one, which will generally be your first meet and greet, or that first moment of personal contact. Hopefully that makes sense. Moments of truth will be from a phone point of view, will be the first impression that I get when you pick up the phone. So the way to actually define this is work through your moments of contact, your critical points of contact with where a prospect or a customer engages with your business, and start to think, where are these points as they go through the time of payment is a moment of truth. Think about a restaurant. Where are your moments of truth as a restaurant user? When you walk in, when you first sit down, how long does it take for somebody to actually come and acknowledge, or not acknowledge, but in fact interact with me? How long does it take from a meal to be served? What is it like when it's put on the plate? On the table. These are the moments of truth. These are the points in time that make the most difference. So here's my point to all of this. If you're putting a wow factor in your business, and rather than say if you're putting a wow factor in, when you're putting a wow factor into your business, put it on a moment of truth. Make it coincide with a moment of truth, and it'll have more impact at that point in time than anywhere else in your process. So you need to think about, what are my interactive moments as we go through our process of engaging with the business, working through our interaction with the client to buy, to purchase, and then those moments in time of purchasing. A moment of truth in a fashion retailer, and we've all probably maybe had this experience, but maybe not, or not maybe realised that it was a part of a process, might be, say, when you've bought a piece of clothing and somebody else in the store, maybe someone else, that reinforces your purchase, that sort of says, wow, that was a great choice, that looks great on you. Now, you might have thought that was I might have just completely taken away the magic of that moment by you understanding that that may actually be part of a good business's process, is to reinforce your purchase. Another wow factor will be, when that purchase is handed over, might there be something else that might surprise you when you open the bag further down the track when you get home or whatever. So, what do you do after somebody's purchased if you're a service business? I wonder how often businesses would send out a thank you card after a purchase, simply to say, thanks, we really appreciated your business. Looking forward to seeing you back again. You would think to yourself, wow, that business really is interested in having me as a customer. And the point is, what did I say first in that sentence? Wow, it's got to, you've really literally got to create an experience somewhere along the track that gets somebody to open their mouth and say, wow, even if it's to themselves, okay? That's when you'll start to get this sort of movement up the ladder where people are starting to really advocate and be a raving fan of your business. Without that, you have to have a wow factor. Well, if you've got great consistency and you make it really easy to buy, but if you really want to seal the deal, look for somewhere where you can put this sort of wow factor on within your sales and delivery process. I can remember a menswear store whose wow factor was a tie. I think yes, I'm just trying to remember now what it was, and it was when they bought a suit. Now this wasn't in their promise. This wasn't when you buy a suit you get a free tie. That's an offer. That's not a wow. That's an offer. So that's marketing. Wow would be, I didn't even mention it, you bought a new shirt or you bought a new suit, and I actually picked a tie and put it in the bag, and you and literally when you got home you rang the store and said, I think you might have made a mistake, you put a tie in the bag and I didn't pay for it, and you'd sort of say, oh no, that's okay, I just thought that it went well with your suit. Wow. Okay, so again, defining it, wow is not predetermined offers. So consider what your wows are. They're not always giveaways, but they need to be something that will encourage someone's eyes to light up, like our friend on the slide that you're looking at right now. Okay, so what have we got? We've got consistency, we've got easy to buy, and we've got wow factor. Now, so what that means is we've now created a way to improve your customer service proactively. Could you come up now with one way to make your business more consistent? Could you come up with one way to make your business easier to buy from the customer's point of view, an easier process, less painful, less constraints, more flow? And could you come up with one wow factor in your business? Well, what you've just done there is you've done three things to change your customer service. As opposed to go out and create better customer service, we've now got a method by which we can create better customer service. And then can you go back and make it more consistent again, easier again, and more wow factors? Hopefully the guys on the call on this webinar can now see that those things will collectively be now considered to be great customer service. But you can't create great customer service unless you create the things that create, unless you change the things that affect customer service. And it's not smiling more and being friendlier, although that's a part of it, of course. But of course, those things are only useful if they're consistent as well. So we've now got some tools. We're armed with a few tools to go away and think about how we can affect our level of service that will start to bring people back more often. Of course, combining these things with other tools that bring people back more often, like I've got a database. I communicate with them on a regular basis when they're, I can make them aware of things that are improved in my business, the things that are new to my business, that I can remind them about my range of services and I can invite them back. I can, I can form them into a membership and create value for them to keep coming back, and methods to communicate with them. They're all part of getting them to come back as well. But I mean, they'll keep coming back of their own fruition if you keep working on these sorts of aspects of customer service. So I hope that that makes sense to you. The important thing here, and I guess I'm making the point, is you can't stop. You can't sort of say, okay, I'll change that, and that. That's enough. That's good customer service. What happens is customers always expect you to get better. So what is innovative and what is a wow now won't be a wow factor in 6 months. It'll become part of their expectation. So you need to continue to innovate. you know, the wow of today, all of these things of today just become part of the service of tomorrow. You know, once upon a time, cars with cup holders, cup holders were a wow factor. Now if you get into a new car now, even the least expensive car, you'll say, well, where's the cup holders? It's an expectation rather than an add-on, if that makes sense. So, you know, these sorts of competitive differences, defining things, won't stay defining unless you continue to work on them on a relatively consistent basis and continue to innovate. So you've got to, as a business owner out there, you've got to keep thinking in these same areas. How do I continue to get these to be better and better and better? You've got to stay ahead of the game, and certainly you've got to stay ahead of your competition, and this is hopefully some ways to do it. So finally, I want to make you aware that, you know, we say this, but I really believe it. I experience it every day, that people pay for service, and the data that's coming through, very recent data, is suggesting that the importance of customer service, or the importance of service, is growing again out in the field. Back, and you know, we look at the States and the UK for sort of trends. We saw back in 4 or 5 years ago where price was becoming a bit of a leader, and there's no surprise there. They were suffering some pretty ordinary times in the States with their economy. But those things have turned around, and people are really seeing much higher values, and certainly gravitating towards those businesses that are providing higher levels of service, and they're paying for it. So I think that's important for you to know. Okay, so we'll move. Well, I'm conscious we've got exactly 2 hours and 2 minutes and about 3 minutes to wind this webinar up, but I wanted to make a few things known to you going forward, and they are, of course, we always finish these with our next opportunity. So if you want to write these down, on the 6th of August, we've got a free seminar in Bendigo, how to get and keep great customers. This is a seminar that we put on back in January or February, sold out. We had 90 odd people there. And when I say sold out, I guess that's not hard to do when it's free, but all it was booked out, and it booked out pretty early. So if you really want to, if you went to it last time, you want to get into it again, my suggestion is go to our website and book in. You can book straight into our website. It's not filled yet, so that's available. That's a seminar in Bendigo. Tuesday the 11th of August is our next webinar, and it's called Finances Aren't My Thing. So if finances aren't your thing, this is the webinar that you need to be on. If you're already fully conversant with everything to do with financial management, then skip the next webinar. But at this, my data suggests that 5% of business owners are really financially intelligent to the level that they should be for what they're doing. So if you're in the 95% of people who finances aren't my thing, then jump on our next webinar, and in an hour I'll try to make finances your thing. And lastly, August the 27th. So August is pretty busy, clearly, for learning opportunities, and they're all free for you. So the other free seminar is the 6 Steps to Growing Your Business. Again, this is a webinar, a seminar that we put on, I think, in February of this year, and I think we had a few spare seats, but not many, out of a full auditorium of about 90. So again, jump on those. We got great feedback from both of these seminars in terms of the value that people got from them. They're around 2 hours, 2.5 hours, so there's a lot in them. I really encourage you to jump on the website, on the Breck website, and register for those. That's the address, businessreeducation.com.au. And you'll also find a recording, the recording of this webinar will be up there. I would suggest jump in early next week, and it should be well and truly uploaded by then. That brings me to the end of this webinar. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten a lot out of it. I think that there's a heap of a heap of things that you can do tomorrow to improve your business, literally tomorrow. And that's the great thing. That's why we do these webinars. We want to encourage you to not just sit, listen, and think, oh, that was interesting and good value information. It's only good value if you actually implement. So I've said it before, I continue to say it. If you do nothing about a webinar or a seminar, if you implement nothing within 30 days, you'll never will. So please implement something from tonight's webinar. And I thank you for your time, and hope to see you at either one of our seminars or at our next webinar or at any of these series going forward. Thanks again for your attention and your participation and your presence, and we'll finish our webinar with that. Thanks again. See you again on the next one. Bye for now.